listeners, and thanks for joining for the first episode of Wicked Redeemed podcast, where we are seeking to explore the relationship between the ancient Christian gospel and the present culture with a New England flavor. I am Matt Wigton, a recovering Midwesterner who has now had the opportunity of serving as the pastor in New England for just about 2 decades. You'll hear more of my story in just a few minutes. Joining me is my co-host and colleague, Shayna Stoll.
Thanks, Matt, and welcome to our podcast. We're so excited that you're joining us. And I, as the salty New Englander, am excited to be part of our church and just seeing the stories of wicked redemption all around us. You'll also hear more about my story in a few minutes. But Matt, as we kick off our show, we should start by telling people what the purpose of our podcast is, and maybe even ask the very first question: why a podcast?
Yeah, Shayna, great question. Why another podcast out there? I think, for start off, for me personally, I have really benefited from podcasts over the last few years. This medium, particularly in the mornings as I go to work out, and I'm able to put on my headphones, block out the other sounds, and listen to a variety of topics that have relevance for everyday life, and often in times enrich my own spiritual journey. And I've been a little late to the game, admittedly, to the podcast thing, but we know that as a culture, podcasts over the last decades have had a huge impact in shaping our culture, and many people listen to them.
That's true. I benefited from a number of podcasts in my life. I started listening about 10 years ago when I was a stay-at-home mom, and I wasn't part of a church yet. And I found, so much guidance and resources on them. But at the church where we work, we're right in the middle of the community, and we always have our doors open. And sometimes it's great, and we have incredible conversations and interactions with people from our community and from all around the world. And then other times we have very unique characters that come in and, create great material for a podcast.
And we may have some of those characters on the show Definitely. In the future. Another key aspect of what we hope to accomplish in this podcast is hearing the stories from guests that will help us to consider the way that the ancient Christian gospel is interacting with our present culture. So with that said, we should probably start by explaining our own name and what kind of our goals are.
Yeah, we definitely need to do that. And for some, it might seem like we are totally geeking out on theology or that we're a little crazy. Maybe it's true.
We may be a little crazy.
Yeah, a little bit geeky too. But hang on, because these words and concepts that we're setting up are where we're trying to go with our show.
That's right, Shayna. And so for starters, we should start with the show's title, which we are featuring on our sweatshirts. And we have these little stickers that we're happy to give to you if you want one. And what is it? The name of the podcast, in case you missed at the beginning, is Wicked Redeemed. Obviously, this is a fun play on words. Wicked in the literal sense means something evil or morally wrong.
Right.
But it also has a second usage in New England. Shayna, tell us a little bit about that.
I think the first usage is actually in New England. I think you have it wrong.
Okay.
I think we started, and we're trying to figure out, is wicked an adverb or an adjective?
Adverb. Well, help if you explain how it's used, and then if you are listening, let us know if you think it's an adjective or an adverb, or maybe it could be both. Can it be both?
I feel like it's a sentence enhancer.
Well, tell us how it's used.
So it's used here to enhance a sentence. So we've had a wicked great summer here. The weather has been beautiful. We've enjoyed some wicked delicious lobster rolls. And we're about to have a wicked thunderstorm. So
it's generally like a good descriptor. It's a good thing. But you can't...
It doesn't mean good. No, it just means...
It pops. It's got some pizzazz.
Pizzazz.
All right. But you can't use it... You can't use it on its own.
You can't just say something is not wicked.
I'm feeling wicked today.
Because that means if you say it on its own, maybe that's the adjective.
I don't think that's the right way to use it.
I don't know. You can't just say that's wicked, because that means it's bad.
But it's not the correct usage.
It's not the correct usage.
It's
not the musical. Ariana Grande has nothing to do with this.
But it is a good musical. But anyway, so that's a little bit on Wicked, and then there is Redeemed.
You let us know about that. That's your.
Well, we're all hopefully being redeemed by God's grace. But in our regular usage, we use this term frequently, sort of in the idea of redeeming something or a coupon. For example, my kids, we recently took them to an arcade. That's a whole Wicked experience in its own. But when they were there, what do the kids do, right? They get the tickets from the games that are overpriced, and then they go and they redeem overpriced prizes from these tickets. That's the idea of redemption. So that's kind of a fun and the way we use it in a popular usage. But in Christianity, the idea is that God is in the process of redeeming the world and redeeming humanity through and in the work of something that he had to pay the price for, and that is the cost of Jesus Christ. God is in the process and has redeemed the world through and in his son, Jesus Christ.
Amen. And all around us, and in many of the discussions that we've had at the church, we see people both experiencing this redemption, right, and struggling to come to terms with what that even means. So in our own stories and in the guests that we will have on, we hope to engage in the stories of Christian redemption, but also with those who have or are presently wrestling with the challenging nature of what that even means.
And it is challenging.
Yeah.
And that's why we hope to engage in this challenge. Mm-hmm. There's lots of confusion today about religion and Christianity and specifically. And there's lots of legitimate questions. But to boil it down, to cut it all back, we need to go back and look at what is the foundation of all of this. At the heart of the Christian faith is the gospel. And in the Greek, gospel is just the word evangel, which simply means good news. In the first century, what would happen is a messenger would run into town and say, I've got some evangel. We won the battle down the road. And today we might say, I've got some good news. Did you hear the Sox? They pulled off a winner the other night, right? That's some more evangel in our current age.
They pulled off a wicked win.
A wicked win. Hopefully against those Yankees. We hate the Yankees. But the good news of the Christian faith is deeper than just what we beat the Yankees.
Right.
And there's plenty of podcasts. There's plenty of media out there today. Plenty of people complaining about all the bad things out there that sells. And there's plenty of just bad news itself on the internet. But we are hoping to look at good news that's deeper than just stories about ourselves, stories about God working throughout history to bring about redemption. So Shayna, kind of give us a little bit more of an understanding of what the term gospel means.
Yeah, for sure. So simply put, like you said, the gospel means good news, right? And the good news is that there's one God in three persons, Father, Son, Spirit, originally revealed to us in the Old Testament as Yahweh.
And you love that term, Yahweh.
I love Yahweh. And
you like to use the term.
I do.
Yep.
John Piper, he got me so hooked on Yahweh.
Well, and he would want to say be hooked on Yahweh, not John Piper.
I am hooked on Yahweh.
He wants us to focus on the Lord
as
our chief objective.
Right. Yep. So he's revealed himself to us, right, Yahweh. But because of the fall and the introduction of sin, we have separated ourselves. Humanity has separated ourselves from God. And all of the created order suffers from the impact of the fall. But God entered into the world through the person of Jesus Christ. Amen. Right? His life and death and resurrection has accomplished a way which we can have a restored relationship with God and achieve right standing before him through the work of Jesus. The global and historic church is called to be like little embassies, declaring good news and acting as signposts to redemption through faithful and loving presence within our community. And I think that our church is really trying to do that. And I think we're doing it well in a lot of ways, but we still have a lot more ways to go.
That's so right, Shanna. And I think that these are really, really big terms. So if you're listening, thanks for continuing to listen. Hold on. Okay, just keep listening because these are like really big terms, really big ideas. You may not be all on board with them right now. You might be thinking, this is crazy stuff you guys are talking about. Keep listening, keep wrestling with these terms,
Definitely.
thinking about them. And that's what we hope to do, because these terms have changed millions of people's lives, not just the terms, but what they imply throughout history. So we should not just like blithely dismiss them.
Yeah.
And I think as well that so many people around us acknowledge that there is something deeply wrong. We all agree on that. I don't think, it's hard to get people to agree on anything, but we all agree there's something deeply wrong in our culture today. We talk about the isolationism, there's tribalism, there's, bipolarity in politics, and that's all true.
Yeah.
But we have a way of understanding that in the Christian faith that while that's true today, it's really been true throughout history. That this is part of the fact that our relationships, our systems are all fractured, ultimately because of the results of the fall. And so God is bringing through the church, through the gospel, redemption and shalom as a foretaste of the future, and the church has that message. And so we have a way of understanding and addressing all of these problems that are very real in our world today and have been throughout history. And so we hope to unpack this again, and the present culture. This is the next topic, the next term we have to explain. So we kind of looked briefly at the idea of gospel. What is that? Then we said we're going to embrace or look at how that ancient message impacts our present culture. Now, present culture is also a huge topic, a difficult thing. Who are we to try to tackle all of the present culture? Well, that's not where we can't address all of the culture, because
Nor are we trying.
We're not trying, because all of our lives, you and I, those that are listening to us, all of our lives encompass many different dynamics, and we inhabit different and overlapping cultures, right? But the specific culture that we will be focusing on is the area that we live in, which is broadly New England, but more specifically a coastal village in eastern Massachusetts. And so we hope that we are offering one perspective, one little glimpse into this area and how the church is functioning and not functioning, how God is at work, or maybe and people are wrestling with that in an area of the world that is beautiful and has a rich history, and a rich history with religion, a rich history with just a general culture. But it's also, like the rest of the world, in the midst of a radical cultural change, both with its relationship to religion and other key institutions. So with that said, Shana, you are a townie. Wait, can we say you're a townie? Are you a townie? What do you think?
I don't know. I don't think so. I moved here 30 years ago. My mom grew up in a different state. My dad grew up in Gloucester, which is much different if you're from here than Rockport.
However, our town did actually leave Gloucester 140 years ago, so historically it is part of.
Okay, fine.
We were a parish of Gloucester.
I'll be a townie and
so you've essentially been here your whole life.
Almost.
So you're kind of a townie. Maybe a townie, we're not sure.
We're not sure yet. You give us your feedback.
There's some people that love being townies. They're like, I'm really proud that I'm the townie.
Yeah. I'll work on it.
You're close to being a townie.
I'm close. I'm closer than you.
Again.
I definitely have 10 years on you in being a townie.
Yeah, I wasn't growing up here. So guys, let us know. Do you think Shana counts as a townie? Are you a townie? What makes a townie?
I don't know.
It's an important question.
It is, okay, but
Doesn't
not
matter.
as
Doesn't
important.
matter. It matters culturally. Anyway, from
from
your perspective as a townie or a wannabe townie and almost townie,
okay.
What's our topic? The present culture.
Townie.
So what do you see as the present culture?
So from my perspective, as a salty New England townie.
Yeah, she admitted it.
I am. I feel like today, like New England is widely disillusioned by the church. And I feel like our millennial contemporaries are broadly like unchurched. So they don't even know how to be in a church. How do they worship? What does a service look like? What is required of me? That's really intimidating when you don't know to walk into a church for the very first time. That's intimidating. And I found that true from my experience, and I know I'm not the only one, right? I also feel like they seem unhappy and afraid, like rebels without a cause, like I'm mad, like you said, like something's wrong, but I don't know what. Self-idolatry and comfort, I find, are major focuses as a culture. Again, worshiping the created, not the creator, right? And that reveals ourselves in our community through clout in their name, or in some cases, those names can be traced back to like the Mayflower.
I mean, that's kind of old. That's a while ago.
It's a while ago.
Wicked old.
Right? And it's wicked. I'm proud of you. Associations with yacht clubs and country clubs or generational rank. There is pride and identity and a sense of security in these things. And that's not bad in itself, because there is a really rich, deep pride in New England. And you don't find it anywhere really else in the U.S. because we're the oldest.
To this
right?
extent, yeah.
Right.
We were here first.
Oldest child. People are not necessarily opposed to God as long as they can do what they want, right?
That's right.
And so I think many people are looking for something deeper, but they're not sure where to look. And they get deeply frustrated at those people who do speak on behalf of the church because there is a justified distrust.
Absolutely. And I see a lot of that as well, Shayna. And so we hope to delve into these realities more in future episodes as we listen to and engage with those who have been hurt by the church. We're going to talk to people who are considering taking steps to maybe placing their faith in Jesus and asking, what are you thinking through? What are you wrestling with? And then we're going to even speak to some people who have rejected the faith. They've grown up in the church and said, we reject this now. No, it's no longer for us. Not because we necessarily agree with all of these individuals. We love them and care for them. And we believe that their voices matter and that these voices are important to the discussion that we seek to engage in. On a large scale level, I'm personally grateful to the work of many scholars. Jim Singleton is one example of one who have explained and looked at where we are at today in Western culture, describing our current state, again, more broadly than New England, as what they call post-Christianity. And what this means is that for past generations, there was sort of this a cultural assumption, not that everybody was a Christian. There were some outliers, but most people, were culturally kind of Christians. They went to church on a regular basis, especially for like the holidays and baptisms. It's just what you part of what you did. But that is no longer really the case, especially for the younger generations. And we are as well, part of that is we're seeing those major institutions that used to serve as the backbone of religion in America, schools, seminaries, denominations, are collapsing at a rapid pace. Much of this has really shifted. I mentioned September 11th since I will mention that in a few minutes. Since the beginning of the 21st century has really sort of rapidly, we've seen this decline, again, in religious participation and fidelity to the claims of the Christian faith and participation as a whole. But now there are many voices saying that maybe this has plateaued recently, and that there may be sort of a renewed interest with Generation Z, the generation younger than us, and so we'll see what that looks like if that remains to be seen. One example of what I'm talking about, it's a funny and sad example that happened at our congregation a while ago, is that it was Sunday morning, and people were coming, beautiful summer day, July, June, something like that. People were coming in and out of the church, and there was a young couple that walked by, and they said, "What's going on? Is there a wedding?" Because they were shocked about the idea that people would go to church on a Sunday morning. Their only context for a church was that people might have a wedding there. And so sadly, that reflection is broadly true, that many where we live is full of historic buildings that used to have worshiping congregations, and many of them are now closed or have been turned into condominiums or libraries or concert halls. And so it wasn't really off for them to be surprised that people were still going to church. But to me, that example really so highlights where we are at in our little place of the world.
Absolutely. And as an example of this in our community and much of New England, the Catholic Church played a major cultural influence, and since the late 1800s. But in the last 20 to 30 years, we've seen this largely collapse. And there are many around our generation who grew up culturally Catholic but don't have any interest in the church or Jesus today, right? And in fact, in our own congregation, our Baptist congregation, there are more people who grew up Catholic than Baptist.
That's right. And so, like, again, putting our cards out there, our interest is not to try to make people Baptist or just to come to our church, but we want to engage our culture and encourage people to think about these historical claims that have changed the world, that are centered in Jesus. Now, we're not, people get distracted. They want to talk about, well, could Jonah have really been in the whale? Or were those big people, the giants in the story of David?
Goliath.
Well, Goliath. Anyway, how could there be, good questions, but those are not the questions of which the faith rises or falls. We need to start this and wrestle with, what about Jesus? And everybody wants to avoid that, but that's where it all starts. And so that's what we're looking at, these ancient claims. And so with that said, it is in one sense a challenging time to be part of the Christian faith, but it is also an exciting time.
Definitely.
And so I think the decline of these institutions that in many ways have done a lot of great good in the past and are still in some cases doing good, but are changing. And the decline in church participation, the decline of these great old churches also gives us a valuable opportunity to come back and evaluate what is at the very basis of the Christian faith. The very basis is not about preserving human institutions. It's not about preserving nice buildings, but it is fundamentally about the person and the work and the claims of Jesus.
Amen.
The gospel. So while what is going on in New England, or our smaller part of New England, is not that all unique to the rest of the Western world, at least, but I think that we are maybe a little bit ahead of the post-Christian milieu that other places in the country are seeing, because there's maybe a greater Christian culture or subculture in other places. But I think that this is the future of where the Western world is going. Maybe not. But I think we can offer a little picture and encourage everyone listening to see the way that the triune God is still in the business of wicked redemption here in New England.
Every day.
Which brings us back to our final descriptor, which is, again, we said that we want to talk about the ancient gospel in our present culture with a New England flavor. Shayna, what is New England flavor?
Pumpkin spice. Just kidding. Well, not really. But I feel like New England flavor, like we talk wicked fast, too fast. Matt reminds me all the time, slow down. We always
drinking coffee does not help. I think I'm on my eighth cup of the day.
But see, he's revealed himself as an import. And true New Englanders always drinking iced coffee, no matter what the weather, right? And we will cut you off in traffic and then flip you off in the traffic because it was your fault to begin with. Get out of my way. Warm and fuzzy are not how we are described, but hardy and tough. That's much more accurate. And many families have been here, like we mentioned, for 5 or 6 generations. And it's incredible and admirable and historical. But man, do we hate change.
That's so true, Shannon. I was just thinking about the fact that in this small, wonderful little town that we live in, the traffic is ridiculous. And it could be so easily fixed if the town just adopted to the rest of the country and learned about traffic lights. It's so obvious. There's like 7 spots, including right outside of our church, that needs a traffic light. And anyway, that's
you just need to learn to drive slow, man. 20 is plenty.
But the point of the fact is that you're right. I think a lot of people don't understand that there is this real pride in tradition and the way that things have always been done, which again is a blessing and a curse. My family took a tour of Fenway Park earlier this year, and when we're there, America's oldest ballpark,
Green Monster,
best, go Sox, and when you're there, it's over 100 years now, and they have the seats that have been there 100 years. Now these are really small seats
for pilgrim-sized people.
People were a lot smaller 100 years ago. That's a whole other topic. But you get there, and they're like, these are like horrible seats. They're like not comfortable. You get stuck in them. You go to somewhere like a ballpark in Colorado that's had like 7 stadiums in the last 100 years. They have like heated seats, like comfortable.
Well, you know what we call
these are
those people?
Very uncomfortable seats, but they're like, we're not going to change because it's the way we've always been done. Some of these seats, they don't even like face home plate. You're like looking, you gotta anyway, that is a great illustration of New Englanders.
Don't be a pansy,
not wanting to change.
Don't be a pansy.
But the point of this is that the connection to the community, the church, is that, we're saying that in the church there are some historic claims that do matter, that history does matter, that we're part of a larger story. And so I think sometimes we can dismiss this connection to history and tradition, especially if maybe from somewhere else in the country is sort of stuck. But there is a real value in that, especially when we're trying to get people connected back to these historic claims.
Absolutely. I mean, the richness of the ancient gospel and the traditions, right? That's something that any New Englander can see and appreciate. Like, yes, I understand how important that is. And that is a good foothold for, preachers like you.
Yeah, and not all histories are checkered. Not just because it's a tradition doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, but at least it's a platform to connecting our culture
Definitely.
with the ancient Christian faith. Something else, Jana, is that's affected where we live that I've come to appreciate is the ocean culture. Right? There's we mentioned that we're next to Gloucester, which is America's oldest seaport, now over 400 years, and so there's just this rich tradition of the sea, of boat building, of fishermen,
of delicious seafood. Matt's favorite dish is clam soup. Matt, would you like to explain what the heck clam soup is?
That was an accident. Just a few months ago, we were ordering lunch for the church office, and I said I'd like some clam soup.
So disgusting. Oh,
I meant chowder.
Yeah,
can you say it like chowder?
Chowder. Don't try chowder.
Yeah, chowder.
It's chowder, clam chowder. I want
chowder.
a wicked quick cup of clam chowder, and it's got bacon in it.
It's a form of soup with clams in it.
No,
So it is.
chowder is a white, milky broth. Soup is clear clam juice. That is disgusting. I will never let you live this down. Clam soup for life. That's disgusting.
Anyway, so here's the points, guys. What do you like better, clam soup or chowder? Let us know. Chowder is famous. So anyway, this is a little bit. That is a New England flavor, right? You don't get great seafood.
You can get a chowder scented candle at the Rockport Candle Company that Christina Wilcox has concocted, and it smells just like clam chowder.
All right, they're not sponsoring our show, but that was our first product endorsement. So maybe they'll at least give us a free one or something. We'll see. All right. So anyway, a little bit of the explanation of what the terms mean, and one of the main ways that we hope to discuss these topics, as we've already hinted at, to get a little perspective, is to hear people's stories, hear their perspective on how they have wrestled with or encountered or understand God's wicked redemption. And so in a minute, we're going to share a little bit of our stories. But before we get to that, we wanted to set this up with referencing this important book by Tim Keller. Now, something we didn't mention earlier is that another reason that we got into this podcasting thing is that you and I and several other people from our church have gone a number of times to events with the Gospel Coalition National Conference and other things they've done, and highly been impacted by many of their resources. And we saw a live podcast production of
Knowing Faith. JT English, JD Greer.
JD Greer, but Jen Welkin. Great we'll reference that podcast in our show notes as a great resource to look at. But anyway, Tim Keller was one of the co-founders of the Gospel Coalition, also a New England connection because Keller went to seminary at Gordon Conwell here in New England. He spent a lot of time in New England. It was critical in developing his own theology, and then he would go on to spend most of his career serving in the Northeast in Manhattan. Amazing gospel ministry there. But this book, The Prodigal God, many people would say is his sort of key understanding of what the gospel is. And if you remember this famous parable, we often remember the story of the prodigal son. Easy to remember that there's this son who wastes all of the father's resources on this ridiculous lifestyle. He loses it all, ends up eating from the pigsty. And as he comes to the end of himself in complete desperation, he in this form of repentance, he comes to the father desperate, rightfully afraid. Is the father going to bring me back? The father runs out, embracing the son in tears, bringing him back into the family. Now, that's one part of the story, but what Keller so magnificently demonstrates in his book is that what we miss is that there's a second part of the parable, which is that, and Jesus actually Jesus is giving this parable to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the religious elite of his day. And at the end of the parable, we see that there's the older brother, right? That's what and the older brother is bitter and angry because he thinks he is mad at the younger brother because he thinks he deserves the party from the father.
Right.
He's done everything right. Who is the younger brother to get the blessing from the father? And so Keller's whole point is this, is that there are two ways to miss the gospel. Two ways. And there is sort of the wild way of missing the Father's grace and just doing whatever we want and living a reckless lifestyle. But the second way is to think that we have it all together on our own, that we have done enough, that we earn and merited God's favor because we're good people and we're not like the younger brother.
Right.
So I think that both you and I, in our own stories, identify more with one of the other brothers, and we recommend this as a fantastic resource and want to set it up as kind of a core understanding of what the gospel is, but also want to share a little bit about our own story. So Shana, why don't you start off with your story?
Okay.
A little bit, just a summary of your story.
Summary of my story.
Yeah.
I did grow up here. Very young parents,
Townie.
divorced
She's a
early.
townie.
I'm a townie, a little bit of a townie. I did grow up here, young divorced parents. I grew up going to our local Lutheran church on Sundays because our family was Finnish. And so that was part of the tradition. And so we started going there on the weekends. But during the week when I was with my mother, it was just a lot of New Age spirituality and really downplayed the validity of the gospel. It was just not part of it. It was to be used as like a great influence and inspiration. Like Jesus was a good guy, but not my Lord and Savior. And so I continued, down the spiritual New Age trajectory. And in my late teens and early 20s, I studied Buddhism and the namas and the niyamas and meditation and yoga and all that jazz.
Herbalism. You told me about that one.
Oh,
too.
yes. I also studied herbalism.
Herbalism.
That's totally fine now.
Okay.
Everybody studied herbalism back in the Old Testament. And so, like as life went on and got difficult and I had hills and valleys, there was nowhere to go, really. But about 10 years ago, my husband and I were having a really hard time in our marriage, and we lost our first son. And it was horrible. It was, we knew during the pregnancy that something was wrong, and that we would not be able to have this baby full term. It just didn't work out that way. And it was very horrible. It was horrible. It was the darkest time in my life for sure. And at that time, I was cleaning my kitchen one day, and I was dumping the dustpan into the trash can. And in my mind, I had this thought, you need to have a relationship with God. And that was so strange. It floored me. I did not know how to have a relationship with God. I did not know what that meant. I was not happy at all to have that thought. I was probably kind of bitter and angry, I would say, because what are you even talking about? Why wouldn't I be able to do this? But I could not shake it. I couldn't shake that thought. And so I reached out to the pastor that I had known as a child, and I explained everything that was happening. And, how do I have a relationship with God? And her response was, God is everywhere. Just look for it. He loves you. He's everywhere. And that was really not helpful. That made it more difficult because I'm like, okay, well, that just gave me no direction. And it
What a missed opportunity.
It was a missed opportunity, and it just kept my spiral, continuing. But I did have one Christian girlfriend, and I explained everything to her and just whatever's going on. And she sent me a song, and we'll link it. It's a song called "Matter You Matter" by For King and Country, and it just spoke to me in all of the broken places, and it gave me hope. It said, to the one who gave it all. You matter to him. And I was like, I'd not really ever heard that in a way that my heart could hear it. I don't know. It never struck me before. And so, okay, if I matter to Jesus, then I need to know Jesus, and I need to figure out how he can matter to me. Like, how can this relationship build? And so that was 10 years ago, and
Well, you're not going to tell us that at that moment everything changed.
Not at all, no.
Everything got roses.
I wish.
Beautiful
If
stuff. I mean,
only.
you do have a daughter named Rose, but
I do.
it wasn't just like,
No.
health and wealth
No,
all of a sudden. Okay.
So we ended up, walking through harder times. There was infidelity in my marriage, and then we ended up in divorce, and then, partial custody of children, and a lot of heartbreak. And during that time, I wish I could say I did everything right. I wish I could say I ran to God with every single thing, but no, I made a lot of wrong choices. I definitely prodigal son the hell out of the last 5 years, but I have learned just how much God does care and love for me, and just through all of the trials and the mistakes that I've made, I can go back to God and I can confess it all, and I can just lay at the feet of Jesus, and he meets me there every time.
But it's so amazing, like that it was this really the death of your child,
My first son, yeah.
which is what led to this
Life.
coming to Christ.
Yeah.
So in this really, really dark valley,
Yep.
again, it didn't get better.
No. But I wasn't alone in the valley.
Yeah.
And that is the part where you're about to preach on James, right? Like, count it all joy in our trials, because we are not in our trials alone. We can do them with God. So then we're fast forwarding again, and I start attending a little mini mega church up here, which up here it's just a few hundred people, not 3,000 people, but I started going there.
In New England megachurch. Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yep.
We had small groups, and I loved my small group leaders, Chris and Melissa Chang. They were like absolutely fundamental in my faith walk, and I am forever grateful for them and all the other people there. But it was hard because I wasn't in my community. I had to commute a half an hour to go to church and to see my church community. And so one day, my family and I were walking through this beautiful park in the middle of town, and my husband walked in the front door of this Baptist church and said to the greeter, "My wife goes to church too far away, and I need her to go somewhere closer. Tell me about your church." Mortified, furious. Haven't looked back since. So that was 6 years ago.
Yep.
I started coming in July 2019, and your wife Megan was very pregnant with your third son, your third kid, your second son, yep. And she waddled over and she sat with me, and it was awesome. And then I applied for a job here, and I didn't get it. And then I finally did get it.
You did. we after the second time.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so now it's amazing, and it's so cool, Shannon. We have seen that 6 years has been a wild journey. Of course, we all came through COVID, that dark, wild time, and so we have seen a lot of growth. And now you're a ministry leader. You're on staff here at the church, and now we're doing a podcast.
What's your story?
Yeah. So my story is that. I grew up in a mega church. I mentioned there are, I think, 3,000 people in Ohio. Wonderful place that taught the Bible well, that cared for people well, and really did a great job specifically of trying to minister to families and children. So grow up with a lot of good examples, a lot of great opportunities there that the older that I get, I'm more grateful for. And my parents are still involved in that location. My sister is as well. And so that was where I was introduced to the Christian faith and believe that I did become a Christian early then, was baptized. Did you mention your baptism?
I did not.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother fun story.
Yeah, but we'll get to that another time. Anyway, so I was baptized in elementary school, raised with great teaching there, would serve in the church, following the examples of my parents. And, fast forward to college, I think that for me, I also during that time was developing an interest in law and politics. And part of that, of course, comes naturally with those pursuits is legalism, right? The law does matter, rules do matter, but I think that also impacted my understanding of Jesus and the Bible. And so at that point in time, I would say I was very legalistic and very much looking down on the people that did not have it all together. Instead of caring for them, I was very much like, oh, those people are the problem. Let's go after them. As opposed to seeing that all of us are equal at the cross. We all need the gospel. And that really is what the gospel mentality should change. Is not thinking that, okay, because I was doing some of the right. That's the other lie, is I wasn't doing all the right things, but I was doing a few things right. And so I thought, I'm so much better. I have it all together. But I think that over that college period, which is so pivotal for many people, I began to really question my understanding of the gospel, what was important. It also happened that the beginning of my freshman year in college was September 11th, an anniversary we'll be celebrating here this month. And all of these things went together to really shake my understanding of reality and to say, what do you want to do with your life, Matt?
Right.
And so I went from looking at law schools to then looking at seminaries. And funny story, I looked at 8 different seminaries all over the country, came here to Massachusetts, went to Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. That was the worst experience. I came during a blizzard in February of 2004. Nobody really talked to me. Later on, somebody said, well, Matt, that's New England hospitality.
That's
so
I
was just, but I came, but I think they wanted me to be tough at the beginning. So I miraculously I came back. For a lot of reasons, it is a great seminary, and I did come back and was so blessed by the teaching and the experience there. Part of the experience was I met my wife there, and then we got married and started at the church about the same time, which was the fall of 2008. And so we've been here. We've seen a lot of renewal, exciting growth, and really just fallen in love with New England. I joke with people that originally, when I came here, I didn't even know we were coming and was not a fan of small towns, the ocean, or art, all of which are key in our town. I've come to love that, and it's an example of the way that God can indeed change us and redeem us to love and appreciate things more. So I love our community, love the church. Yeah. We're grateful as well that we have 3 kids. You have 3 kids. I don't think
I also have 3 kids.
We will have 3 kids, and so part of this community, and excited about where God is taking us. So that's a little bit about both of our respective stories. Obviously, a lot more to the stories, but just a little bit of a little picture of where we both have come from.
Yep.
With that said, Shana, let's finish up talking about our hopes and plans for our future episodes on the podcast.
Definitely. Well, we did mention it, but our goal is to have some of our friends that agree and disagree with us, and just to have healthy conversations here, and to just help expand the gospel, right? We're just trying to keep it going.
Yeah, give us. We tentatively has our first guest scheduled for next month. I don't think we should say his name yet, but he's a great guy. Can you give us a little bit of background on this mystery guest?
Our mystery guest. Well, our mystery guest is a friend of mine from the recovery community. AA has been a part of my story, and a huge help in my life. And I totally advocate for 12-step programs if you need one. Anyway, I met this friend there. He goes to one of our local churches around here, and his story of God's work and redemption in his life is inspiring and beautiful, and I just can't wait to share it.
That's right. We're looking forward to that on our October episode. And with that said, our hope is to put out an episode every month until next summer to kind of evaluate at that point after our first season. And we thank you for watching us. We have a great team that is helping us on the tech side, advising us. Several people have listened to earlier versions of the podcast, and so we're so grateful for that advisory board. Many people helping us, again, who invested in this program. As we mentioned earlier, we have some stickers that if you would like, or do you call these stickers?
Decals
that say "Wicked Redeemed." You can put them on your car, refrigerator, I don't know, your head, wherever you want to put it. That's a little weird, not your head. But anyway, take a decal with you if you're around here. And then follow us. We have a Facebook page, Instagram page, YouTube page, and then we're also putting this on a streaming, what do you call it, podcast.
Yeah, anywhere you stream your podcast.
Wherever, You'll find it. And so if you have ideas, questions, people you think should be guests, put those in the show notes. Let us know.
Absolutely.
And we want to end every show by asking our guests who they would say the key 4 or 5 people in their spiritual journeys have been. So we're going to answer those questions today and then close the show. So Shana, give us a little picture of who you'd say the top 4 or 5 people in your spiritual journey have been.
Okay. Well, I got to start off with Matt and his wife Megan, because they're incredible and they have adopted me as their younger sister, and I will forever be grateful. Absolutely fantastic. Otherwise, I got to go with my Gospel Coalition favorites. Jen Wilkin, she's incredible. Her Bible studies and her books have been incredibly formative for me. Also, I love H.B. Charles. I did mildly assault him.
No, not assault. We won't say that. But
what would I say?
You
jumped him.
surprised him.
Surprised
he was
the
a little
heck out of him.
surprised.
I did. I surprised
we
myself.
got a picture. We were all there.
We'll show the picture. I was so excited.
Yeah,
I love H.B. Charles.
And we'll show his.
Incredible.
We'll link his podcast, his sermons, great sermons.
Yes,
Yeah.
and also Tim Mackey. He's an incredible teacher of biblical literacy and history. Also, his podcast has been incredible. So those are mine.
I think you went over the limit.
I don't care. You said or 5.
Did you do anybody else you want to add? You could do 6 if you want.
No, I'm good.
You're good.
Those are gold.
Okay. Well, I'm again thankful to many people that have invested in me in my life, and so this is a tough question, I think. And so when I answer the question, I think that these people really summarize times and genres in my life, and many other people that could also be answered in the question. So start off with my own father. I think he set the example for me in life of what it means to be as a Christian. He's still around, still an active lay leader in his church, and even to this day, he helps review my sermons every Sunday. Send him an email, and he reviews it and gives me a voicemail of what his thoughts are. Secondarily would be the pastor that I grew up with. And again, I don't, to this day, don't fully agree with all of his theology, but love his example, his leadership, his preaching, and grateful for the way that he, early as a child, gave me a vision of what a pastor could be. Thirdly, I would say that there was a professor in seminary named Paul Lim, my first year in seminary. He was a systematic theology professor at Commonwealth Theological Seminary, and he helped me at a time where I, again, was wrestling with what I believed to expose me to Reformed theology. And that was part of the young Reformed Restless movement, which then in many ways was birthed into the Gospel Coalition. And so he, but he was still as a wonderfully intelligent, highly decorated academic, but more important than that, he was so humble in his love for Jesus, and he didn't want this just to be a mental exercise, but to show us how theology and wrestling with these questions is a way to love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so that was a transformative experience in my life. And then fourthly, I would say, again, this is a challenging one. I was formed early on by politics and media, and as I mentioned, and so one of the people that symbolizes that is former Ohio Governor John Kasich, who I knew more when he was the congressman for the district from Ohio that I was associated with. And so I saw him close up, and I saw his sort of involvement in the community, his desire to make a difference and to be engaged with people one-on-one. He also famously worked with President Clinton to balance the budget back in the early 90s. And so, yeah, still a politician, not perfect, but I think stands to me as an example of trying to work in the community and do the best to be salt and light and genuine in the community. So 4 examples for me: my pastor, my dad, Governor Kasich, and Dr. Lim, many more that I'm grateful for knowing. With that said, thank you for listening to us. We're so grateful that you have joined us on our first episode. Let us know what you think. Shana, do you have any final words?
I'm just grateful that you stuck around, and I'm excited that we're part of witnessing God's redemption and just here for the 1 minute that we get to worship all together.
That's right. So until next time, we'll see you next time on the Wicked Redeemed podcast.